Hey 918ers, it is Geek Boy, and I'm coming to you from the ultra secret, secure, and socially distant fan cave located in parts unknown right here in the 918. And joining me tonight from our various outposts and remote sites are various members of Fanboys 918. I'm going to start with the IT Geek. Welcome tonight, sir.
How's it going tonight? Thank you. Broadcasting from Geek's Fanboys 918 Studios. Glad to be here tonight.
You're in the back office tonight, sir, it looks like.
Exactly. We had to shut the studio down for the COVIDs, the coronas and stuff. So we'll get the studio back up whenever all this craziness gets past us. But sitting in here in the back office, just enjoying a little bit of vino and ready for tonight's episode.
Hey, as our buddy Dean Martin says, if you're not drunk by 8 o'clock, you're not trying very hard. Exactly. So I also want to reach out tonight to our special guest, one of our 918 transplants. He is coming to us from the state that is so great. It has not one, but two professional baseball teams and serves as the fictional home for not only the Blues Brothers, but Kolchak the Night Stalker as well. Ladies and gentlemen, give your hands up. Welcome to the great artist himself, Mr. Sprout. Welcome, sir.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
We are so glad you're here tonight, man. Actually, you picked the topic tonight, I believe.
Yeah, being an essential person in the world today, I figured that I needed to do something to reach out to all the people that were stuck at home, eating and drinking, while I'm out driving a semi, serving my community.
Nothing beats the essentials. You know what I'm talking. And by the way, shout out to all the essential employees who have to put themselves in some form of danger or at least peril, while this is all going on. So if you've tuned in tonight, you know that our topic is going to be centered on tabletop role-playing games, our love of them, our history with them, and how, in a lot of ways, they really don't get enough respect. But before we do that, I would like to thank nearly all of our nearly 500 followers for choosing to engage with us in one way or another, whether it's through sharing things, commenting on the articles that we've thrown up, throwing out some pictures that we then resend, or even, joining in, watching videos like this, giving us discussions. If you're here, we want to thank you very much for that. We want to thank you for sharing your time and deciding to engage with us in this way. And if you like what we're doing here, if you like these videos, if you enjoy our content, please leave a like. And if you really want to help us out, share the video. And if you really want to help us out, jump over to our YouTube page, like and subscribe to it as well. If you want to support us financially, please send any unopened Obi-Wan Kenobi action figures from that original Star Wars action figure collection. We will give you the P.O. box to mail them to here shortly. On the other hand, Facebook is still the primary way to engage with us. We're in the process of building our YouTube channel, but anything you want to do to support us in that respect would be greatly appreciated. But as Bugs Bunny says, on to the show.
Before we get too started there, John, let's also thank Bruce Haley and Stephanie Hines for joining us tonight. They are online.
Absolutely. I believe you're in charge of the message board tonight because I'm not able to see them. So
not a problem. We will shout out to everyone I can see and get acknowledged to whoever's giving comments to us. So we appreciate you guys joining in.
Correct. So no discussion of tabletop role-playing game would even be considered valid if we didn't talk and then start with the bad boy, the 800-pound gorilla in the room, the gateway drug to all tabletop role-playing, and that's Dungeons and Dragons. I think we all agreed, when we were everybody pick your favorite three, and I think D&D was at the top of the list for all of us. So I'm going to start with Sprout. Tell me when you first got into D&D and what it was about it that hooked you.
Well, I fondly recall, I had a lot of close friends in the neighborhood. We all grew up together, and we went over to one of my friend's house, and his older brother was playing D&D with a bunch of his friends. And they were probably 4 or 5 years older, and kids being kids, we were like, oh yeah, let's go, do something else. But I was really intrigued because they were rolling weird shaped dice. They weren't really talking in, foreign languages or anything like that, but they were just playing a game differently than, Sorry or Monopoly or, or Cheesy or something. So I just ditched my friends. I sat there and just watched them play, and they didn't ignore me, but they were just in their own little world, and I was just like blown away by it. So I mean, it was just one of those things where it's like, is this fake? Are they making up something, or am I just missing out and I just don't know about it?
Okay.
So,
all right. IT Geek.
So I can actually say my first D&D experience was actually when I went into the military. I got a
What?
station. Yes. Didn't know you guys had games going on in high school at all.
Well, no, because we were trying to meet girls at that
Well,
point.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I was either working or you know, as some of us know, I was taking my girlfriend out and everything. So,
And as Bruce Haley said, he was playing this game at a time when he should have been kissing girls.
oh, Katie Hines just joined us as well.
I didn't have a girlfriend at that time, so yeah, I got to play games.
Yeah.
So,
there, Katie Hines.
I got stationed at Ellsworth Air Force Base, which is in South Dakota, where it snows 9 months out of the year. And so
And there's a girl behind every tree.
That's exactly right. And so basically just stuck in the dorms, met some friends, and basically got introduced to it, and had a lot of fun. And, you know, I actually remember the very first character that I created. He was a half-elf magic user. And, you know, it's funny, right before we started, we were talking about the names that we've created characters. And I don't know how I came up with this one, but I named him Lint. And the guys gave me so much shit for it. And I was like, man, that sounds cool. And, you know, it was just that. And then, you know, also one other thing that I really enjoyed about that character is I played him up until about 18th level. I actually had a familiar form that we named him Cal the Kobold. And so he actually, we developed him actually as a nitpick that he would follow me around, and he was like up to a 6th or 8th level fighter by the time we were kind of almost retiring that character and stuff. So it was just so much fun. You know, we sat in the dorms, we played the games, and it was just, it's a lot of good memories.
I see. 18th level?
Yep.
Dude, and at that point in D&D's development, anything past about level 14 or 15, it was almost like a DM didn't know what to do.
Oh, yeah.
But let's see, we've got some comments here. Let's see. Oh, Katie Hines said this is the Fanboys Quarantine Edition. She's loving it.
She's love it. Bruce came in. How might my life have been different had I not started playing?
And I got a comment on this next one.
Okay. One
of Bruce's favorite all-time characters that I had the joy of DMing was Five Shires Jones. that was when we were all in love with Indiana Jones. Like, man, I need something kind of like that. So he came up with Five Shires Jones, and Five Shires was the bomb.
Nice.
So special shout out to Five Shires Jones, who is no longer with us, but long live Five Shires Jones. So
John, give us your first experience or introduction into D&D.
So mine was probably the least expected way you could think. I mean, most people are like, yeah, I had some friends that played it, or like you said, you got into it in the military, which a lot of people do. Mine, it was in the early 80s, okay? And it was the product of my attending a private Baptist school, which is probably the most unlikely place you would ever think that you would encounter Dungeons and Dragons, especially because that was during the time when, you know, it had gotten some bad press and the church was calling it Satan. It was the Harry Potter of the 80s. You know, the church was saying it was satanic and it was evil, and if you dabbled in it, you were going to be, you know, condemned to hell, and you're going to get into all kinds of stuff. I mean, and that stigma stuck so much that, I mean, to this day, Turtle Gal has reservations about playing Dungeons and Dragons. She'll play any other game. I mean, even fantasy games she'll play, but she has very reservations about playing D&D because that was hammered into her. But you know, some guys in my study hall class were really into it. They were a few years older than me, kind of like Sprout's story in that respect. And one of the guys was working on a dungeon that he was gonna run. And of course, you know, I'm a little goofy 7th grader. What's that? You know, and he showed me, and of course, he helped me roll up some characters, which is the bane of everyone's existence.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I stuck in the military. I used to gen characters up for fun just to see what I'm sorry, you start rolling dice. He's like, man, I'm gonna try to get the best stats I can and everything like that. So
Well, I didn't like it because I always rolled better when I was making the character for somebody else.
Oh yeah,
Like,
of course, yeah.
Right.
But,
You know, you're lonely when you're going, man, this chick is so hot.
God.
She's
I'm giving her.
I just rolled a 16
yeah, yeah,
and not her age.
yeah. Boy, the stuff we used to do to try to impress girls. Anyway, but as
I don't
the
think
first
that was
time-
to impress girls.
probably not. But so the first time I played, I'm like, wow, this is what a game is supposed to be. I mean, you know, I would see games that were based on Starsky and Hutch or you know stuff, and like, well, what's that do? Starsky and Hutch moving around this board? It has nothing to do with it, you know, and we weren't competing against each other. We were a team. We were all working together, you know, to try to solve a problem. Our alignments notwithstanding,
Right.
you know, so that's what I thought was so neat about it was we were actually on, for lack of a better term, an adventure. You know, we were all doing this and we all had some different sensibilities and again, now for me, our DM was pretty straight laced. Of course, again, this was a Baptist school that taught it to me. So, but our DM was pretty straight laced and didn't get into a lot of the deities and things like that. And he would not let anyone have an alignment that was beyond like neutral good. So I'm assuming you guys had different experiences, and I think Sprout said the alignment thing was what really got him into it. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. And then not to take away your thunder or anything, but it progressed to 9 different, I guess, alignment versions,
Right.
and then they scaled it back down to, originally started at 3, they moved it to 6 and then 9, and then they moved it back to 6 and it's back to 9. I guess because some of the different writers and owners that wanted to kind of take it to the next edition. So I think they realized that 9 was the best way to go, and that they wouldn't alienate the thousands of prepubescent players that have grown up with the game. So,
hey, we got a few comments here. Let me catch up on this.
Go ahead.
Going. So Bruce Haley came in with the satanic panic. I believe that was probably back when you made the comments about the you had a bad rap. Jay Pyatt just joined watching. Welcome, Jay. And he says, hello, fellows.
Hello.
And Bruce came back with a comment. I had holy water thrown on me, kicked out of being an altar boy, probably saved me from something bad.
Yeah, like being a Catholic priest and going to jail.
Yeah.
Sorry. Can't prove nothing. Made that saving throw.
It's saving throw. Never mind.
You had to play the game.
We are still in the family hour. I'm not going to go there. So, so buddy, did your DM, were they a stickler for alignments and things like that?
No, really. You got to pretty much just do whatever you wanted and stuff, and it was more kind of the person playing it. And I remember I started out as like I said, I started out as a half elf mage. Wizard, whatever you want to call them. I did then go, I tried a ranger for a while. That did not work well. Apparently it just, my dice hated when I played a ranger. I mean, literally I had one character and I didn't even make that character through the first scenario. Cause he put us through 2 or 3 encounters. And I mean, like he just bit the dust hard. So, I mean, next thing you know, the DM throws a dragon on our trail, and I just walk up and call them a worm or something like that. And basically, he's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah," because I don't want this character. He's like, because that was one thing. Your character just couldn't leave, and you get to roll up a new character. Your character had to die before you got one. So I did everything to the GM I could to get that dragon to basically crispy critter me. So yeah, but I mean, so through my evolution of D&D, I almost tried every character class out there, and I mean, I even he let us play. One time, he let me play a twin brother set, which I call them Hans and Franz. If you kind of get my drift, where that's a Saturday Night shout out, and they were barbarians that were raised by dwarves and stuff like that. So I had fun with that one. I would say probably the 3 characters I had the most fun with, and the one class that I settled on was paladins. but it was Lent, my mage. I created a thief called Regis Greensleeves, and I actually took whittling, and I used to whittle chest buster coins that if I cracked into one, I would throw one into the chest, and apparently I cracked into a chest of a lich that basically became hunting me throughout the realm for almost like, I think 6 or 7 scenarios. He had him chase me down and everything like that. And then basically my final one was a paladin. That's the class I kind of settled on whenever I would start to play any type of D&D game, was a paladin. And my favorite one was Jazal Belan. And I just, he was my favorite character. And I even still use that name in some of the things I do today as a like online presence and stuff like that.
Okay. Sprout, what was your favorite class of character to play?
I always liked the fighter class. You seem to have much more, I guess, freedom. You could, be, a main tank kind of a guy. You could be like a not necessarily an assassin, but more of just a melee kind of a fighter. And depending on who you were playing with, like there was some guys, we played a lot in the Navy, especially when we were on deployment. And some of the people, like I would roll, girl characters. And I learned real quick that you just don't do that around some guys, because they will take advantage of, you playing a female, and they'll just be really rude. Now, I can be really, really nasty and graphic, but these guys would like almost make me feel violated to be playing a female character. And I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to take my war hammer and kill you. And, that's the only way I could get out of that scenario. But, the fighters, I tried mages. I hated magic missile. I just felt like that was such a cheap gimme spell. And I always, we played where you could have like a critical hit, a called shot, or a fumble. I would fumble on magic missile all the time. I mean, I was a horrible mage. I couldn't cut it, so I just stuck with the swords and the clubs and the warhammers and things like that. So
I see. Okay, so what I'm hearing from IT Geek is that the Ranger was the class he never got to know what to do. Yours was the mage. The class of character I never knew what to do with was a cleric. I just never really knew what to do. It's like I can carry a weapon, but it can't be a sword, and I can cast spells, but they can't really do any good. I mean, that clerics were not really my friend. And I kind of like you guys, I stuck close to the fighter classes for a long time, and then ironically, I was at a tournament in the early '90s. With my good buddy, Mr. Frank Noble, and we were supposed to play, which in a game, in one particular game, didn't make. So we ended up getting in this sort of open gaming group, and the guy just handed us out some character sheets, and I got a magic user, and I thought, oh my god, here we go. But the particular spell combination I had, the particular situation I ended up winning player of the game and winning the pot because it just happened to work out, but. Other than that, I've always been a fan of the more run, jump, shoot type. I never could figure out what to do with a thief. To a certain extent. Yeah, I mean,
look for traps
and look at traps. Yeah, which means I got stuck out front. So if I failed, the trap got disarmed one way or another. But right. So.
Hey, before we go any further, we got some comments here. We'll catch absolutely. Up. So Jessica Hines came in, is watching. Bruce made a comment, oh shit, Sprout. So I'm not sure what point that was referring to. Sorry, Bruce. Again, trying to play catch up and let everyone get a chance to talk. Then Jay came out. I'm not going to touch that one. I believe we're probably talking about when Sprout was talking about rolling up characters that are girls.
Or Bruce being an altar boy.
True. Bruce came back. Yes, talk about dice having a will of their own. Bruce not becoming an altar boy comment. Basically, Jay liked that one. Jay came in with my favorite D&D were magic users. I still have them from back in my Navy days. We now have Lori St. Clair Van Pools watching. Welcome, Lori. And Bruce came back with, "It's okay, baby girl. Tell Salty C Daddy Sprout who's messing with you." Sorry if I couldn't get that one out without laughing.
It's all right. It's all right. So I want to jump back to a point that Buddy brought up. Excuse me, IT Geek. Got 5 people watching.
Exactly.
That IT Geek brought up about the lick that would chase you around. By that very sentence, that means you were kind of in a loose campaign. You had some continuity. Right. So I want to ask both you guys, and we'll start with you, IT Geek, since I brought it up with you first. What was your favorite type of adventure? Was it like a standalone, or was it more of a campaign with an overall theme?
So actually, the one that I enjoyed the most was actually a campaign that was ran by Module that he kind of grew upon, or he maybe married 2 campaigns together, and it was basically a campaign that was Attack of the Hill Giants. That basically the area was being overrun by hill giants. We were commissioned as a group, an entourage, to basically find out why they're coming down from the hills and invading the area. We were then, like I said, we tracked them back to their stronghold. We found out that basically they were being forced out of their stronghold, where he started a second campaign that took us down into the Drow caverns and stuff like that. And so that's how it grew into that type of environment and stuff. So the D&D GM that I had was he was really good in the sense that he always kept it fun. He kept it moving, which was always important. And he liked to tell a story over many scenarios, so it wasn't just a one and done type of thing. So,
okay, Sprout, what about you?
I've played campaigns. I've played modules. My favorite. I have 2 favorite dungeon masters, game masters. One being the gentleman sitting right in front of you there, with the same hairstyle as me.
Yes, we're in a cult.
Except when you made me roll a red shirt when we played Star Trek one time. Hadn't seen you like a decade, but hey, you be the guy that gets killed first. And then one of the guys from the Navy who's still a really good. One of the guys who I was in the Navy with, is a very good friend of mine still. He just improv'd, and it was just completely however he felt that day or that week. If he read a news article or a story, he would kind of change the goal or the campaign based on that. And it was set in kind of an Asian Oriental type, not ninjas, so to speak, but just that the samurai code and that kind of thing. So even my character sheets were written in Japanese.
Oh wow!
So I just looked at them a moment ago, and I was like, I can't read them now.
Well, I'm going to say it's impressive that you knew how to read them back then, because I would have been like, experience like this before we go any further.
Yeah, so I mean, it was really cool, because I mean, we played like that for like 3 or 4 years, and then the other group of guys that we'd do BattleTech and D&D with, those were just the guys that we would just drink with, and it would just end up being hilarity all night long. So,
well, and that's part of it. Part of it is, I mean, and I know there's members of my Trek group watching. I know you guys are there on the other end of the cameras. The stuff I run could probably be done in about 2.5, 3 hours. We spend about 3 hours of BSing and cutting up and laughing, just because it's almost like a miniature family reunion every time. Miniature, see what I did there? Yeah. It's almost like a small family reunion every time we come back together. It's like we got to spend an hour rehashing what we just did, everything that's happened, and just making jokes and whatnot. Of course, we've gotten a lot more complex in our gaming as we've gotten older. And just going underground and killing shit.
I would say we've become a lot more intricate.
Okay, but the point I'm trying to make is going underground and killing shit doesn't really cut it anymore.
Exactly.
King bought. Right, I mean, back in the day, it was like the King's bought some land and it's got some caves in it that we think there's some stuff in. I'll pay you guys a bag full of gold to go clean it out. And so that was it. That was the plot of the game.
Yep.
And
we got a few comments real quick of let me get caught up. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
We got a lot of people want to weigh in tonight, so that's a good thing. So Laura joined in. Welcome, Laura. Laura basically, I guess, referring back to Sprout was talking about the GM. Basically, I think this is towards John and I. Both are dicks, but the game is always compelling. I'm like, wow. But that's what we love.
First comment just went to the gut.
Both barrels. Bruce came in, big fan of BattleTech. Yep, we'll be getting into that one a little later, Bruce. Stay tuned. Laura came back with way to set the bar, Sprouts. Japanese, really? We're not worthy. And then Jay came in. So my GM in the Navy was a guy named Paul Brink from the Bronx area who always ran a good mix of 4 epic and short stories, but he was the most like John with full epic scenarios. And then Laura came in. Hey, now, short jokes, laughing my ass off. Okay.
Couldn't help it.
I love it when we have good content like this. I love it when we have
this is great. This is fantastic. Yep. This is why we're doing it. So I got to ask, did any of your guys' parties okay, so for our younger folks that might be tuning in, role playing was way different back then. Oh, yeah. And did anyone's party get stuck, or did one guy in the party ever get stuck being a mapper?
Yes.
Was that you, by the way you answered that?
Yeah.
Please detail for our younger people what.
So I can't tell you, how many pads of graph paper we purchased, and then, and of course, as the night went on and a little bit more of the alcohol flowed, you take a left. No, I mean right. No. I told you left last time, and then your map's always just a huge pad of just eraser and redraw, eraser, redraw, and that was it was a curse to be the mapper in a sense. One, it was fun in a sense that you get to know everything, but two, it's also just like you got to, even when the GM wants to change his mind, it's like, well, you said here, and he's like, no, and you got to go back and fix your map. Oh man, it was just a huge pain and stuff like that. So,
by the way, Mr. John Burke is tuned in,
but it's not to scale.
It's not. Oh yeah, it's not to scale.
It's not to scale. Speaking of that, so
John, we're gonna need a few more. We're gonna need a little bit more map space.
Gonna need a little bit more map space. God, the bane of my existence. Speaking of that,
hang on. I'm going to say Bruce came in. She went there. Cindy Brown is watching. Jay Paya, hell yeah. Laura Finley was the Mapper C Peoples, and now Robin Michelle Campbell Haley is watching. So here we go.
Well, so I'll get into the little more map space thing here in a little bit. But speaking of that, in this day and age, did any of you guys get into miniatures? Because I didn't have the money for that when I was coming up. Yeah,
we didn't have a. And I'm sorry,
are we still talking about Laura?
Oh, she Laura, that was Sprout's joke. That was not my joke. That was Sprout's joke.
I'm just waiting for the comment to come.
Jay texted me.
Oh, she did.
We did have a few miniatures when I was in Ellsworth that there weren't a whole lot of them. It was more like, you had a little token or something to that effect. But I would say the one that we had the most miniature for was Star Wars. Because
absolutely,
stuff like that, the old stuff. So, Brett, what about you? Do you have miniatures when you were playing?
The only miniature we used was probably, it was originally Battle Droids, and then it became BattleTech, and then Mech Warrior. So, those are the ones we had. We had some guys that tried to do Warhammer, but they ended up just creating a table full of $1,000 worth of painted miniatures that you could never touch. So
and then they went bankrupt.
Yeah, exactly. They were an E1, and they had a small fortune in miniatures.
I can't tell you how many times I went into one guy's dorm room and we were going to play a game, and I started to reach for the miniatures they painted, and like, no, we don't use those. And I'm like,
right. Those are a display.
We get the one that basically hadn't been touched yet. And I'm like, okay, grab all those. And he's like, well, I'm painting those this weekend, so don't get used to that mech or anything like that.
You get the solid pewter colored one.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, gee, thanks.
Hey,
or the plastic.
This is no joke. I've seen these guys at games. They use yardsticks to move the miniature. It looks like the old World War II battle map, at the headquarters, where the Nazis have got the planes and they're pushing them out into the center. And like, what is the point of this? But
dude, you can't be knocking it. We're doing that now.
I know.
We just did that last game. I got those the Pew sticks to push them around and everything.
Only
Man.
because we get our table's too big because we needed more map space.
More
No to
space.
aspiring GMs, when your players are asking for more map space, it's usually because they're retreating. But that's okay. We'll get into that later.
It's called strategizing.
Strategizing. So, one of the great things about D&D that I loved because we're talking about adventures and we're talking about miniatures and we're talking about all that. Sometimes as a DM or a GM, you're running dry on ideas. And you're just like, oh man, I got to put a game together in like 2 days. What am I going to do? And invariably, if I was running dry, all I would do is pull out my books and look at the artwork on them. And when I got into D&D, it was when they sort of revamped the artwork. And my dungeon master's guy was the guy in the green cloak holding the two doors open, which I think we actually have in part of our slideshow here. To this day, the artwork on the D&D product is some of the greatest ever. And being an artist, Sprout, I thought you might want to comment on that.
Yeah. No, I always looked at Frank Frazetta or Boris to inspire me. But when I was, real young, Heavy Metal, the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Huge inspiration. And that came around the same time I started looking at Dungeons and Dragons. But the artwork in there was amazing. And there were some of the same artists throughout every edition. And then I started to notice them in different games, but they were all in TSR, or this artist was all in FASA or something like that.
Right.
Really funny story. It was painful to me, but it's funny to someone. There was a gaming company in Tulsa during high school that I was applying to do artwork for, do some commission work. And so I go in with my portfolio and, he's just blown away, just da-da-da-da-da. And then he's like, well, let me show you some of the stuff we got right now. And he's flipping through and I'm like, oh man, that's whatever. That's garbage. And then all of a sudden I see this one spaceship and I'm like, Ronnie Brown, you son of a bitch. He had sold them a piece of artwork, didn't even tell me that he went there. And then he's like, oh yeah.
No wonder he was conspicuously unavailable for this chat.
So that's a source, but I can go back to that one.
So I was like, okay, well, I never heard back from them. I didn't call them anymore. I was like, I'm done. But I think they went out of business probably because they had to pay him so much. I don't know, but
That'd been like finding out that I actually sold a script to Star Trek, and John was like, "Wait a minute, what's going on? What? You sold one and I haven't? Man, dude, I'm surprised you guys are still friends. I mean, damn."
Yeah. What kind of a game was it? Was it like a fantasy game, or was it science fiction, or what was it?
It was. I think it was like a Star Frontiers type of space game, because it was a definite spaceship. Right. And it was one that I'd seen in his portfolio already, and it was just really surprising to see it. He's like, "Oh, we just bought this piece," and he was kind of sheepish about it when I asked him. I mean, he probably doesn't even remember it now, but
you damn sure do.
yeah, I was mad because
I'm sorry.
I told my mom.
Oh.
I gotta throw this out here. I'm sorry to interrupt. So Bruce came back. Solid pewter is the equivalent of a red shirt. Bruce came in selective withdrawal, and then Bruce still. So Robin came in. Bruce still has those books, and then Bruce says it's Morris Day all over again.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Boy, Sprout, I didn't mean to steal your thunder. That would have been hilarious.
It'd been me.
Oh man, I wish I had that video queued up.
I'd have been pissed
if you weren't a bigger man, right?
That's right. If I wouldn't. So, moving on to our next topic,
we've referred to it quite a bit. So the next topic would be BattleTech then.
Well, no, actually, I want to talk about before we jump that. I want to talk about D&D as the product line got more and more developed and became more quote unquote, I won't call it mainstream, but became more widely accepted. They developed a lot of offshoots like Greyhawk, Spelljammer, Dark Sun, Ravenloft. So I guess my thing is, what was your all experience? Did you guys have any experience with those? I never thought that. I didn't have a whole lot of experience with them. Greyhawk seemed Greyhawk seemed more like Middle Earth to me than D&D. But I want to see what your guys' take on it was.
Right, go ahead and go first, man.
I think the only thing that I bought or participated in was the Horde, which was kind of Attila the Hun kind of stuff. A little bit more Asian. I don't even know if that's PC. Whatever.
Right.
A little bit more COVID centric, but anyway, you guys are drinking. I'm not. I hate you. So
we got grown kids, baby, grown kids.
We're drinking for you, man. It's okay.
I know. Yeah, I'm the one that has to get up at 1 a.m. So
that's true.
But we kind of just improv. We didn't do a whole lot of box sets or anything like that. I just found those too confining, and some of those guys just had no imaginations because it would be just a regurgitation, just different scene, different atmosphere, but pretty much the same plot, the same story, the same kind of action. So, but you were talking about the one earlier.
That, I'm
sure you're gonna explain on.
Yeah, so I did get to play a few of the kind of offshoots of D&D, like Forgotten Realms. I did play a little bit of Spelljammers, but the one that I'm definitely going to throw some serious shade at was a spinoff called Dark Sun. And during that time, it was my really first time at trying to become a GM. So I invested in all the books. I even bought some of the first modules, and or I bought the first module. So I ran my group through it just to kind of keep me on point, because I've never run a game before. So I read the module and went like, okay. And so it didn't really go over too well, because if anyone remembers Dark Sun, the D&D Dark Sun set, basically metal is like a rarity on the planet. I mean, if you have any sort of metal, you're almost like godlike almost. Basically, they're big on bone and wood type of weaponry. So basically, you're running around with like a +1 bone sword, a club, a pole, that kind of stuff. And so the first module is basically your entire group is in slavery, and they have no material whatsoever. So the scenario basically is them getting their freedom. And so by the end of it, like, okay, it wasn't too good, but it piqued an interest just because it was something new. So I bought the second module because I'm still trying to get my sea legs as a GM. And the very second module, your group is basically attacked, captured, sold into slavery, and stripped of everything that they have. And I'm like, I can't do this to the group. And so I ran a second module that I kind of modified, or I ran a second scenario, kind of modified what they had, didn't capture something. So about the third one, like, okay, so third one, because it didn't really go over too well. And I think it was just due to my inexperience as a GM. The third one started out once again that basically they were find themselves somehow in slavery with all their equipment stolen. I'm like, screw this, I'm done with this. And it was probably
that's what happened every time you went and bought a module. You just kept going.
I know. Yeah, it was like, man, I can't do this. I mean, people are just going to get pissed at me, and so we just put that away, because I had a discussion with the group. I'm like, guys, I'm trying to kind of get my sea legs here as a GM, and these modules are not cutting it. I don't think I'm ready to write a module and stuff. So let's go back to D&D. I'll follow some modules till I get more familiar, and we'll go from there. And everyone was like, hell yes. So they were not having fun with Dark Sun. So I would actually say all the Dark Sun material that I had purchased got lost along the ways of my travels to and fro. And I would say I probably, at the time, this is back in the early 90s, I probably invested maybe $100, maybe $150 as an A1C, Airman First Class. So that's a E3 for you guys that are out there in the military. So, you're not making a lot of money at that time back in the 90s at that level. So, $150 and, on top of a car payment and all that stuff, that was not money to sneeze at, but it was money well lost in my personal opinion with
Money.
darts and stuff. So I'm glad I do not own any of that material any further.
Well, my experience with the offshoot stuff actually involves Ravenloft. It was, for those that don't know, the Ravenloft realm for D&D actually just began as a scenario that was very well received. And it was one of the best scenarios they ever did. It has a great castle floor plan that, my God, between my fantasy groups and my sci-fi groups, whenever I want to do something, I've had more players storm that castle than probably, any other thing around. But it was so popular that TSR developed it into its own realm. And one of the interesting things about it was that if you started playing against your alignment, or just doing stuff, the realm would latch on to you, if you will. And going back to my buddy Frank, he was running it at a convention. It wasn't quite a beta test, but it was a brand new set. It hadn't been out very long. I mean, he bought it like the week before, read all the books, and got a game ready to go. And this guy, sure enough, we've all got them. Their alignment's chaotic neutral, and he began to get excited, and he did something that was not really too kosher, and the realm started giving him powers, and he got addicted to that. And essentially, he fell to the dark side before that was actually a phrase, if you will. But he got all these powers, and he decided he was going to attack his party. He was going to attack his own party, and he snuck off from him in the woods. And just as he was about to attack the party, Frank reached over and said, "Thank you for playing," took his sheet and kind of told it. Basically, he had become a monster in the realm and was no longer in control of his own fate. But since so many stories involve role playing in the military, I've got to talk about my nephew for a second. My nephew just went in the Air Force this past year, and couldn't be more proud of him. He had some role-playing experience with us. Not some. He had a lot of role-playing experience with us. We were his first group that he RPG'd with. And when we went down to watch him graduate from boot camp, he was talking about, there was days when we didn't have anything to do, so we played, we role-played. I think he said they played D&D. I don't remember exactly what, but I said, and so he played D&D. He's like, oh, wow, that's cool. That's great. And I felt a bit of pride. And then I stopped for a second and I said, wait a minute. I said, where'd you get the rule books? And they're like, well, we had a guy that was really vested in it, so he knew all the rules. And I said, well, where did you get dice? And this is where my heart swelled with pride that I actually got hope for our current generation. They went over to the BX and they bought a bag of cough drops, and they took each cough drop and they wrote 1 through 20 on the cough drops, put them in a bag and shook them up, and whatever cough drop rolled out, that was what you rolled. And so I was like, wow, that's fantastic. How great is that?
That's phenomenal. I mean, that's one thing I kind of like about that's one of the things I've really enjoyed about role-playing games, and it really got me hooked on them, is the fact that you got a chance to be creative. It wasn't, you got to imagine what was being displayed, and especially with the GM, they helped with creating that visualization as well. And that's what was so much fun, is just experiencing this and trying to imagine what you're seeing, how it's playing out. I mean, there were times that, I'm picturing the battle sequence where I'm doing a tuck and roll and coming up and doing a sword jab into the belly of a dragon and everything. And it's just like, you see this playing out in your mind. And to me, that's so much fun. And kind of seeing, thinking that also kind of leads me into, a little bit about video games and everything that, we kind of talked about, is that if you look at the video games that are in use today, I mean, you can't think of Skyrim and The Witcher and all that this does not kind of all pay a tribute back to D&D. And I mean, we've got even Dark Alliance is coming out. It's a Dungeons and Dragons video game, and then we also have an MMO online where you can play Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. And just kind of see where it started and where it's at today. It's just it's really amazing. But I think also it also takes that little bit of creativity, that little bit of excitement out of it, because you're not having to use your imagination, you're getting to see it visually. And I think that's something I still kind of like about We RPG, is that we have a sense of still imagining things in our mind.
Well, I'm gonna circle back to that here in a little bit, because I want to, I guess, kind of as we close out, to kind of see kind of where role playing is now, for lack of a better term. But to move on from that, as you mentioned things like Skyrim and The Witcher, D&D is not the only role playing game out there.
No.
And as I began to get into this and began to buy books and different modules, things like that, and as I began to get an allowance and began to con my parents into taking me to the various comic and game shops that stocked it, I started learning, hey, there's other RPGs out there, and when I say other RPG, not just TSR products, I mean, we'll talk about some of those later, but there were other companies that were making their own games, their own dice systems, so if D&D was a gateway drug, I say that because it was the most popular, the most well-known, but it allowed you to jump into these other RPGs quite easily because you already were familiar with the concept of how they worked. And so I want to kind of take that bridge here just a minute before we get into the video game segment to talk about, I'll start with you, IT Geek. What was one of your favorite non-Dungeons and Dragon RPGs?
Well, I'm kind of the comic book guy of the group. So I'm out of all the comic book ones, there is a DC version, there's a Marvel version, there was another one called Champions. The one that I enjoyed the most was actually one called Heroes Unlimited. And that one right there, I felt was really close to what I would experience out of reading comic books, especially when I was in middle school and high school and I was a collector. The sheer detail that you could roll to create that character was just amazing. I mean, it rolled down anything from your education level to a military background, your major powers or minor powers. If you had phobias, or if you had like an addiction or multiple personalities, you could roll for that. Or if you wanted to even go the Tony Stark way, or a Secret Soldier, or whatever, you actually could roll for a budget, and then you could assemble the things that you wanted to put in your armor. And you could there was things that you could do to like to make it, to get even a little bit more into it. If you were willing to take on a discrepancy in your armor, like a 10% chance that a weapon system would fail, you get a little extra money, or you get an extra ability for the suit and stuff. So sometimes I was willing to take that risk if I wanted to kind of build my suit around that and stuff. So and again, I can remember some of my I remember the very first character I created for Heroes Unlimited. He was called Ghost. He was a stuntman for a movie studio that was in a mishap on a shoot. Basically, he was supposedly dead, and basically he got mock flight and intangibility with basically white skin with red glowing eyes and like blue hair. But since he
really remember this, don't you?
I mean, like I said,
he's almost got a tear in his eye.
Man, I'm serious. These are some of my favorite characters that I have so much fun when I think of back in my military days. And also, I built the character up that he was also a makeup artist and stuff. So I would use his intangibility as a ghost, and basically he would. My very first scenario is I went and I found out that the studio wasn't paying for, kind of the true traditional Marvel thing. They weren't paying for the proper security things and stuff, or safety protocols. And basically he haunted the studio execs to find out what happened to him, and found out that basically a local crime boss wasn't getting paid for his protection money. And basically due to their letting that happen, he was the reason why he supposedly died and everything. So he solved his own crime. And
dang, dude,
I start saying it was
like Netflix anytime soon. Jesus,
dude, I'm telling you, I've thought about if I could develop this stuff. It was so funny. The GM that was running that game, this all started right about the movie called Ghost came out with Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore. And we always joke that basically he was finally found out that he was still alive and he became part of a superhero team. And so he told his story. So they made it into the movie called Ghost. And so that was the whole joke about it and stuff. So like I said, yeah, Heroes Unlimited was probably one of my first kind of really games outside of D&D that I got to play and enjoyed so much.
Okay. Sprout, what about you?
Well, I really can't top that. That was incredible.
I know. I should have ended with that.
I played the Smurfs RPG. That was fantastic.
Did you play Smurfette?
There was only one girl, and it was really hard to share. But no.
What kind of connotation are you talking about, Sprout?
Well, I just wanted to see your spit take there. So. But one of my favorite games, and this is started off back in high school, was Shadowrun, and that was kind of an amalgamation of Dungeons and Dragons, Cyberpunk, Blade Runner, and it really foreshadowed the whole home PC computer networking, anything that we do today with our phones and our computers that's, my 10-year-old can do, oh, Dad, I hacked into this, or this was stuff that was described in the game where you would hack. You were one of the classes was called a decker, which was basically you had some cybernetic abilities, you had implants and things like that. So you could literally log into computers and nodes, and you would hack the system and be able to run a character in basically the Matrix at the same time as in the real world. I just thought that was pretty fascinating, and had that game probably survived till now, it would just be like a Thursday, no big deal. But back then, nobody could even afford a computer back in their home. I think we had a legit computer when I went to Votech my senior year. That's the first time I actually saw a PC that wasn't the size of a bank vault. But I think I ran you guys through a couple different scenarios. I was a horrible GM or DM, depending on which game you're playing. But I had an incredible imagination. But I'll be damned if none of you guys followed any of my plans whatsoever, ever. I would have all these really extravagant scenarios. I'd look at the different modules and campaigns. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's okay. That's a little amateurish. Well, I would start, building this entire world, and I wanted you guys to be so immersed in it, and none of you would. You guys would just do stuff that was, looking back, really ingenious. Because of the gameplay and the game style you guys had, it just didn't fit with my my vision, and so it was way more interesting to see what you guys would do to break my campaign instead of going down the path that I want you to go or defeating the enemy that I want you to fight. The way you guys just resolved things on your own, that was way more rewarding for me as a GM. So. And that's one of the things I liked about Shadowrun was there's so many different aspects of it that you didn't have to conform to anything. I thought that was pretty cool. So, and I spent probably about $400 in books on it anyway. But
oh my gosh, I remember playing those couple of games, and they were so much fun. I had no idea we were eviscerating you at the time we were doing it, but we had so much fun doing it.
Yeah,
but. I want to
John, before we go too much further, we got a lot of comments that I need to.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Sorry, man. So Robin came in. You guys are funny. This is way back a while ago. So Laura came in. Bluesman is cut like that. Bruce came in. We take this stuff seriously. Eli joined us watching. So
hello, Eli.
Welcome, Eli. Bruce replying to Robin. You know it, baby. Bruce Haley came in. I think actually we're going to skip that one. So no, wait. Bruce came in. Sprout was Azrael, Bucky King is watching, and then Bruce Haley Shadowrun was awesome. So, John, not to cut you off, but I want to just throw a little bit of a Shadowrun type of comment out there is like,
Yeah, go ahead.
I got to play the video game, but I got to play the role playing game when I was in the military. But the most fun I ever had playing Shadowrun is actually, I don't know if you guys remember, but Sega Genesis, Cox used to have the Sega channel, and on that channel there was actually a Shadowrun video game.
Yeah.
And I remember this. I would play it. My boys would play it. I mean, we used to upgrade our computers like nothing, like nobody's business in the game, to go through the internet and, crack through things. It was so much fun. I mean, I like the role playing aspect in the sense that there was more. It wasn't more just go here, do that kind of thing like the game was, but yeah, it was so much fun, and I would almost say that's probably a little bit of an introduction to role playing game that I gave to my kids when they were at such a young age and stuff. So,
well, and that's true. Most of the younger generation, they've been introduced to tabletop in reverse. They get into a video game, and then they sit at a tabletop and go, "Oh, this is like so and so," or this is and so again, it's all become sort of intermingled at this point. My favorite non D&D game, I don't, and anyone who's watching will not be surprised, is FASA Star Trek. And I have to say FASA because FASA was the company that originally got the Star Trek role-playing game license. Star Trek's been through several licenses. Last Unicorn, Decipher. Currently, in my opinion, as far as gaming system goes, the most superior system ever done is the new one, the Modifus system. And I'm not saying that just because we beta tested it, but it is a fantastic, fast-moving system.
Which John does have a beta test credit in that book.
I do. I am actually listed in the role-playing book as one of the play testers. But anyway,
Are you a master beta?
Yes, master beta.
Yes, I was the master beta. Yes. But I discovered FASA Trek at the old Tulsa Star Trek convention, or Tulsa sci-fi convention called Ocon. Used to be held out at the old Camelot Hotel when it was still standing before it was condemned, and even a couple of years after it was condemned. But anyway, so I'm in the open gaming room. I've always been a Star Trek fan. I mean, has been detailed in many chats and many posts. Star Trek's always going to be my first love, no matter what. So, but I'm in the open gaming room looking for a D&D game to fill. Walking around looking for a place that needs an extra player. And I walk by a table and I hear a GM describing some stuff, they're like, that sounds kind of familiar. And from the other end of the table, I hear a guy say, open a hailing frequency. And my life changed forever. I was like, what? And I turned around and they had the Star Trek role-playing game there. And again, I'm like, I've got to have this game. I've got to have this game. One of the greatest things about FASA Trek was all the supplements and all the world building that they did. I mean, because at this time, this was back in the early 80s, early to mid. I think all we had was Star Trek. We had the original 79 episodes. We had the animated series. We had Star Trek, the motion picture, and Wrath of Khan at this point. And so they were putting out supplements left and right, and they were filling in all these corners of the Star Trek universe that had been mentioned in an episode, or just they'd hinted at, or this and all these races that you'd seen in the animated series. You could make them and you could play them, and you could be a Gorn, you could be a freaking Horde.
Yoan voice.
Do what?
You can do the
Thorin voice if you'd like. So, but you could be anything that was Star Trek, and they developed all the animosity between the Klingons and everything, and it was just fantastic. And so I'm like, I've got to run this, and I start running this game, and much like Sprout said, immediately it became okay. This crew is really not adhering to what I've run. So, and I know that if the Blues Man is still watching, he'll attest to this. The Wonder Midget and the IT Geek too. I got to certain points in my scenarios where I had no ending. I would just write them into a certain corner and say, let them figure it out. And whatever they came up with, unless it was just some stupid Star Trek Discovery bullshit, I would let them get away with it. I mean, if they could prove it to me and make their rolls, I'm like, IT Geek, do you remember it differently? Or
oh no, I could tell the frustration would really set in. Is that when we started using previous movies or TV shows in our support of our craziness, and be like, well, John, you remember in episode blah 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 did this and blah 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 did that. So why can't we still do this? And you're like, and you can just see those lips thin and okay, yeah, all right, well,
Okay.
roll for it.
Okay.
And then okay, yeah. And of course,
I do have to say though, and I know Sprout's going to probably want to chime into this. And this was back in my early days as a GM. I got the brilliant idea. We had some guys in our gym class because we didn't play freaking sports in gym. We had to put our freaking shorts on. That was it. They wanted to play it, and so I divided them up into teams, and we had half the guys playing Klingons and half the guys playing Starfleet people, and they were going at each other. And it's Sprout. I think you were part of that group, but I can't remember what team you were on.
I don't remember, but I was in PE.
Yeah,
I think all through high school.
Yeah.
God, I can't remember. I'll 2 o'clock in the morning. I'll remember.
I know. But anyway, so FOSSA Trek was my gateway into, because I was always into media properties, and that's where I learned as a GM that a GM's job is to make you feel like you're in your own little movie or your own little episode or whatever. I may have taken it too far as the years progressed, but that's another topic for later on.
Taking it to next level GMing at this point. But of course, that's just
I think part of the problem I had is, and maybe John had the same problem, is that at some point during a campaign that I'm running, I want to be acknowledged as, this is absolutely fascinating. Yes. Just any given point in the whole thing, just one time. But no, it never happened. It was always, I'm drunk on whiskey, and they make a called shot and roll a natural 20 and all this stuff, and you're just like, why did I even spend 3 days writing this crap?
Well, I will tell you, my friend,
been there as a GM.
I will tell you, my friend, it has happened twice. I've been acknowledged twice, and I've been running shit for 20 plus years, so that tells you I've been acknowledged twice. And boy, it feels good. When one was, I actually had a group of players. Both times were in Star Trek games. No, I'm sorry, it's happened 3 times, and I'll get into that. I'll get into that here in a minute. But 2 of the times were both Star Trek games. One time I had a group of PCs like on a planet. The idea was they were trying to shepherd this race to join the Federation. And while they were on the planet doing all their little rituals and whatnot, the Borg attacked. And so they were in the middle. They were on this planet as the Borg carved this planet up. And I was in the zone that night, and my descriptions were really good. And they're like, man, that in Blues Man to this day will be like, man, that's one of the best things you ever said. And then about a year and a half ago, I did another one where Starfleet had been infiltrated, and there was this big, deep, dark conspiracy. And when it all cracked, I gave them all the information, and they looked up at me like, you're an asshole. Like this, like, how are we going to get out of this thing? I'm like, I don't know. Y'all figure it out. Y'all so smart. You figure it out. So there's one other time I'll talk about here in a minute. But yeah, the 2 times in the 20, 30 years I've been doing this, it really does feel good. So don't give up on it. Don't give up.
I would say, so as my experience of GMs, it's not so much what I enjoy. It's not the acknowledgement that it was a great scenario. What I enjoy is when I get to look across and see a shocked face of something going on.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
That is when they don't see something coming that either I've orchestrated with some other player characters, or I've devised something. Or I've devised something that basically, involves their character and they had no idea, and just kind of see that kind of slow head turn with shock and awe, going like, and basically like, man, you're an asshole. Those kind of moments. Those are the ones that I feel that, or I think that basically I'm like, okay, they're appreciating this scenario because I got them. I gave them something they weren't expecting, and those are the moments that I really, really enjoy and stuff like that. So. But no, I feel your pain, Sprout, when you kind of put this whole scenario, this whole world together, and then like, man, this is gonna be great. They're gonna go this and they're gonna do that, and then right out the get go, they just take a big old shit and go,
yeah,
and just it's like, okay, everything else I wrote is just now I have a beginning point and an end point, and how they get there, I just got to try to steer them that way.
Right.
So
exactly.
And I have to say, we sound very GM centric here. 9 times out of 10, the players don't realize they're doing it.
Oh no, they don't, and that's also the sign of a good GM is the fact that the players should never know that they've totally taken your scenario and just take a dump on it and everything. They just when they get to the end, like, man, that was great, and it's like, yeah, because you fuckers didn't do shit that I wanted to.
Well, and we've all had this, and I'm sure you guys are talking about this. What invariably happens is you'll write one little encounter in the early part of the game that's designed to kind of get them in the mood of what they're going to experience, like get them used to rolling the dice and get them, okay, it's going to be this kind of game, and they get hung up on it, and that becomes the game.
Yep.
And you're like, that's not what I'm trying to run here, guys.
Yep.
But anyway, so IT Geek, not to belabor on our pain and drink and our GM woes. What's another game you loved?
So, this one actually, and Sprout kind of referred to it a little bit with his Shadowrun reference, but mine was Cyberpunk. And this is another one I got introduced in the military. And of course, as you guys have probably recognized from this night, there was a lot of military experiences with role-playing games that I find very fond memories with. And again, this is one that's in no small standard either. This was a fun book. It gave you that whole Blade Runner feel. It didn't have really magic users. It was more of the cybernetics, and like I said, Blade Runner feel with the atmosphere and, cyborgs and everything like that. And
Johnny Mnemonic.
Johnny, yes, exactly. I was trying to think of that very title, and it just jumped out of my head. Even kind of a Matrix feel a little bit. But I'm going to shock you again that one of the best campaigns I ever ran in was a friend of mine that his name was Bill Hovey, and he actually ran. And so in the game, basically, we back up a little bit, is that everything's ruled by corporations in the game, pretty much. And so in hospitals, basically combat each other to do like emergency rescues and stuff. So basically, if there's a call out that basically there's a shot person down or something like that, literally EMTs will respond and literally will have fire teams fight their way to the patient to draw them back because that's how the hospital makes the money. And so he ran a whole campaign. Yeah. He ran a whole campaign that basically we were in the EMT team, an EMT fire team that basically, we were assigned to a major corporate level personnel. And then whenever they alerted that they were hurt, injured, needed emergency or stuff, we were to respond. And there were times that he would have us fly in with our hover cars or hover ambulances and basically fight our way in to get to the patient and get them out. And he had a whole great story campaign about it. This is another one I was like, man, this would be kind of a cool Netflix type of series or something to that effect. If anyone's listening and still's idea, I will kill you. No, I'm just kidding. But so Cyberpunk was another great one that I got introduced in the military and I still have very fond memories too.
Well, and before I jump Sprout real quick, one of the things that I think is interesting about both Shadowrun and Cyberpunk is I didn't get them when I read the books. I'm like, I don't get this, just to show you kind of how my mind was on the whole space opera, thing. I did when I would read these passages in the Shadowrun book or the Cyberpunk book about jacking into the net, as they called it, or whatever it was, like, what are they talking about? It wasn't until I saw, I think, Johnny Mnemonic, or maybe what was the one with Denzel Washington?
Oh, Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
I
can't. Virtuosity. It wasn't until I saw like those types of movies, and I'm like, oh, that's what we're talking. And to give a deep cut shout out, one of the best shows that ever depicted it, even though it didn't really have the budget, was Andromeda. When what's his name would jack into the system and go in there. But yeah, I didn't get that. But we have a real quick comment here from Stephanie Hines talking about when you coordinated stuff from other players. She says, yes, that was Star Wars, and Mel Alvarado is still mad about that whole thing. So
should I give a little backdrop? Because I don't know.
Sure, go right ahead, and then we'll jump to Sprout on another game he loved.
Okay, so basically, I kind of took over a Star Wars campaign that John had started and stuff, and so he was kind of interested in just moving on with some Star Trek stuff and wanted to shift gears and stuff. So
well, I felt like I'd said everything I had to say.
right. So and of course, when I got handed these characters were literally could take off Star Destroyers and stuff by themselves and go in. So I devised a story where Stephanie's character, who is kind of this fighter pilot ace and everything for the rebellion, and Lori's character, who is a up and coming Force user. Both of them wanted to do something kind of interesting with their characters. Stephanie, I think, was looking for more of a change or just willing to let me do something for a story's sake. And Lori's character wanted to go to the dark side for the fun of it. So basically, I engineered. Thank you. Hey man, I've had some drinks.
All of them. You've had all the drinks.
So I engineered with them that literally. Oh, and also John was playing as well. That he was actually he was a double agent for the Empire, but didn't know it. Basically, Darth Vader would use his force powers to basically induce him into this unknown coma that he would have to be activated by certain words. So literally, they knew that there were. It started the story out was basically there was a spy known amongst the rebellion. They were having to have these like remote secret summits and stuff so that no one but the top rebel leaders, which at that time John was one of them, would know where they were at. He got activated, basically put plans in motion, and long story short, basically I engineered that Lori would go to the dark side by basically cutting off the head of Stephanie's character and offering it up to Darth Vader. And so when that all happened, I mean, so Stephanie's over there trying to help. It's during the Empire attack on the place. Stephanie is over there trying to help some injured people. Jason was actually sitting there, and he sees her and starts to help. And I said, well, you see Lori going over, and he's like, okay. So he kind of just leaves her alone because he thinks Lori's going to go help her. Well, Lori goes over there, cuts her heads off. And I remember Jay goes, yeah, wait, what? And he looks at me, and then basically Lori force runs over with Steph's character and offers it to Darth Vader as her tribute for becoming a Darth apprentice. And basically, man, just the whole table. I mean, like if they could have flipped some tables on me, I'm quite sure that would have happened. Just the way they were arranged, it just wasn't easy to flip and stuff. So it was probably one of the few highlights I've ever had in my GM career that I'm like, yeah. And that's when those are the moments that I truly revel in as a GM.
So Sprout, what's another game that's not D&D, that's not Shadowrun that you were really fond of?
BattleTech.
Okay.
I like big bots, and I cannot lie. I've always been a fan of the big mechs. Robotech was real big, the Harmony Gold stuff back in the day. And I didn't see a Robotech game, and I don't know if they actually merged the two or if they splintered BattleTech off from Robotech, but it combined a personal player and then a mech battle in a huge campaign, and it was all turn-based kind of stuff. It wasn't necessarily more of a role-playing, but it was. I could go on and on and on about that game. I'm sure Bruce has got some stories because he sounds like he's had some comments. But yeah, I just love the big robots.
Well, that's what I kind of liked about Pacific Rim when it came out. It reminded me a lot of the, other than the monsters and stuff, it really reminded me a lot of the whole BattleTech type feel and stuff.
Well, all I kept thinking of when I was watching between Pacific Rim, the Transformers movies, and the end of District 9, I kept thinking, where the hell's my Robotech movie? But that's a whole different conversation for a different day. But I think we've lost Sprout.
He muted. I don't know if he can still hear us or not, but it looks like he's muted. He's probably talking to his family. If he comes back, we'll get him back in.
But well, and I don't think as we talked about when we were getting ready for this, BattleTech for me, for some reason, wasn't marketed right because I just thought it was a strategy game like Starfleet
Right.
Battles, where you just put the mechs on and they had their stats and you fought and that was it. You know, something like basically an RPG version of Robot Jocks, for lack of a
Right,
better term.
and that was more actually in line with what Warhammer was, if people remember that game and stuff.
See, if I'd known there was an actual role playing component to it, I'd have been all over it.
Yeah, you know, I think it was, in my opinion, I think BattleTech was someone's attempt of a Robotech type game, but couldn't get the licensing. That is totally
All the mechs look exactly like what was in.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, like they were so close, and so yeah. So I have no history. I have no knowledge. I have no supporting evidence of that. But to me, that just was what it really looked like. This was someone's attempt to finally give us a Robotech game, and you know, some people got it, some people loved it, and some people would just, you know, didn't know what it truly was, because I think marketing was not the best for it and stuff. So
yeah, it was always it was a FASA product, but it always seemed to be like a second tier product.
Right.
You know, it's like Star Trek was their bread and butter, but oh yeah, we got BattleTech. You know, so
exactly.
So for me, you know, my other game that I love, which I've got several, but I guess the one that's just bubbling up to my remembrance right now, and some guys are going to be shocked that I'm saying this, was the James Bond role playing game that Victory Games put out. I love media franchise games, and like I said, I'm very lazy when it comes to world building. I don't like to spend a lot of time doing that. So if I've already got a skeleton of a world, whether it be Star Wars, Star Trek, whatever, to hang something on, I can take it and run with it. But I don't really like to put in the effort of creating an entire world. So when Victory Games put out the James Bond game, it was amazing. I mean, I'd actually forgotten how good it was until, you know, as everybody knows, we're supposed to be ramping up to a great Bond event coming up here.
It's just been extended. Yeah. It's been
we are, yeah, but we were supposed to be on the cusp of it in the next couple of days, and you know, so in preparation for that, I broke the game out, looking at oh wow, I forgot how great this was, and another company had bought the license to the rules itself, but hadn't bought the Bond license, so they basically scrubbed all the Bond references out and re-released it as just a generic secret agent game, and that was another. Like, oh wow, man, this is great. I ran the Wonder Midget and the Blues Man through a demo of it, and it was a great time. We all had a great time, but I'd forgotten how great that game was until I dragged it out, started looking at all the background material, and I mean, you could tell these guys that wrote it. You could tell, man, they really did a deep dive into the Bond novels and did all kinds of stuff. Like you read about Hugo Drax, you know, the villain from Moonraker,
right?
And it had all this background information, like, well, this isn't in the movie. Well, no, because it's from the novel, you know, and it was great. And so it was just great material for a great RPG universe. So, you know, as these games go on and they develop material and supplements and a following, invariably the rules and the supplements get so convoluted that they start to kind of contradict each other. And I mean, Starfleet Battles infamously became known as Starfleet Lawyers at cons because there were so many contradictory rules that it usually became, you know, whoever could argue the best case. But, you know, all these systems end up kind of either rebooting or changing licensees. And you know, so you get.
I even have to say, you even have to think about the GM, because sometimes the GM just wouldn't buy into certain rule aspects and would throw it out the window and stuff.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times that I've looked at rules and games, like, why, you know, I've had to go back and reread them. Like, wait a minute, I don't remember ever doing this when I played this and stuff. And it's just because, for the sake of keeping the game moving, keeping the players engaged and having fun, it's like, man, this would really kind of slow things down to a point that this just wouldn't be exciting anymore. So, you know, to kind of throw a shout out to everyone who's ever, you know, to everybody that's put a game system out and everything, you thank them and appreciate what they've done and stuff. But sometimes it's like, man, did you forget what it was like to be a GM? Did you forget what it was like to be a player? Why are you putting all these rules in here? Because, you know, and we've even said that about Star Trek Adventures, in the sense that this is one that's kind of gotten back to the beer and pretzels type of system, where, it's kind of it's pretty fast paced. It gets through the game and it kind of keeps the action at that level and stuff.
Yeah. Well, and just a few comments here. Bruce's comment that Robotech is way past its time.
Yeah.
He said, I wish they, and he also said, I wish they carried out Harpoon as an RPG. Now, did you ever play Harpoon?
I've never even heard of Harpoon.
Harpoon is a strategy game. And I believe it was a Tom Clancy licensed product. If Bruce is still watching, he can correct that. But it was essentially, imagine like modern naval battle, something like what you've seen in a Tom Clancy movie.
Right.
And it was based, that's what it was you had battleships and things like that on the board.
Right. I'll tell you one that I really enjoy that was a board game, but it would kind of gave you the sense of an RPG was Axis and Allies.
Oh yeah.
So if you've ever played that one, that's one that can take up an entire weekend because I mean you're rolling for not only for your troop building, your troop movement, you're also developing the extra weapons and everything to be able to move your troops and everything. If you've never played it, I don't even think Axis and Allies is in production anymore.
No, but you can find it at certain shops if you
right.
card
I actually still have the one of the boxes of Axis and Allies that I've hung on to since my military days. But it is so much fun. And there was actually an offshoot of that I enjoyed a lot. But I know it did not catch on very well, and it's no longer production. It's very hard to find. It was Ninjas and Samurais.
Yes.
Very similar to that. And that was another fun one and stuff. So Bruce just chimed in. Starfleet Battles is closest. And then Bruce came in with, yes, Tom Clancy. So
okay,
going back.
So I had that correct. I didn't want to make sure I did. So, I think our biggest conversion battle that we had was going from die 6 Star Wars to die 20 Star Wars. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. So I mean,
our group was very, very hesitant to do that.
Yeah. So if you'll see the slide that I'm running right now, I've actually included a lot of different types of the Star Wars RPGs that we've gone through and everything. I agree. I mean, going from the die 6, I mean, how many times have we sat across someone they're like, all right, I spent X amount of force points. I got this level, and especially if I'm higher, people are like, yeah, I need about 26 die 6s to roll here. And it's like,
yeah.
And like it slowed the game down so much.
Then you got to take a half hour to add the shit up.
I know. And it's like, well, oh man, I nudged that one. That one was supposed to be a 6. It's like, oh, God.
Well, then in Star Wars, in die 6 Star Wars, if you got a 6, you got to roll it again.
I know. It was all that's what I'm saying. It's just like it was just never ending. So when they went to a die 20 system, I kind of liked it, but I don't know. Also, you as a player holding 26 die 6s for success, it gave you a sense like, yeah, this stuff's going to happen now. It's definitely going to work. When you got the odds in your favor with 26 die 6 in your hand versus I can only roll 3 die 20s. What? Or I got to roll a die 20. I got to get a 17.
I'm just thinking sitting there as I'm watching one Jedi with 40 die 6s in their hands. I got 6 stormtroopers here. How's this shit going to go down?
They're going to die.
They're going to die. So, we got.
I believe this is probably still Bruce saying, "Wait, did Buddy say he's running a game right now?" I can't.
I just got a text from Sprout. He said his router took a dump.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
that's fine. Well, if he gets to join back in, great. If not, we can finish this out ourselves and stuff.
Yeah,
it was great to have Sprout on. I mean,
absolutely, it was.
That's one kind of cool thing about this whole. Well, I hate to say cool thing, but kind of going back to this whole COVID-19 isolation thing, it's actually kind of made us kind of sit down and really focus on how we can engineer these type of remote sessions between us all. And I know with Sprout and Ronnie Brown and Dwayne being, in different states, hopefully as we were getting this down to a science that now we can incorporate those long distance relationships and fellow fanboys 918 back into the fold and get some great conversation with them.
Okay, so with that being said, there's a couple more things I want to ask about. Well, first of all, any other games in the honorable mention category that you want to bring up?
So I'll go ahead and load up the thing, and so basically the first one's going to be Boot Hill, and I enjoyed Boot Hill a lot.
I've never played it. I never had any experience. Please elaborate.
If you're not familiar with it, it was a Western themed role playing game, and I mean it was your. If you had a great GM, basically you were the Clint Eastwood, the spaghetti westerns. You were the Billy the Kid, and that was so much fun. I only played it once or twice because there wasn't too many of us up there in South Dakota that liked it. I wouldn't say didn't like it. It just wasn't something. We wanted the Star Trek, we wanted the Star Wars, we wanted the D&D, and Boot Hill was just something outside of that. But I have to go back, man. These are fond memories. I remember creating my character. And I, instead of focusing on quick draw and shooting and everything, I actually built a character that was superior at knives. And literally, he would have bandoliers of just throwing daggers and stuff. And I would spend my experience points on basically the speed of drawing and throwing daggers and accuracy, that I could almost beat any type of quick draw in the game and stuff. So that was kind of the character I was building, and so that was kind of fun in taking that time and kind of turning a different spin on a Western themed movie and or role playing game.
Well, and some of these things I think were a little too high concept. Like Gamma World was basically, it was like you were in you were in a Mad Max world, but you still had magic, and Gamma World was just I played it a couple of times, and it just never really took off. Same thing with Star Frontiers. I mean, if there was ever anything begging for me to like, it was Star Frontiers, because you know how I love me some space opera.
Oh yeah,
but
so Gamma World was kind of like what was that one movie that it's a B movie. So Laura, if you're out there, basically it was a Toxic Waste Avenger, was it, or something to that effect?
Oh God, yeah.
That's what I always, when I heard Gamma World, I always thought that's kind of the vision I went to and everything. So I don't think I ever really got a chance to play Gamma World. I looked through the book because, like I said, I had a friend of mine in the military that literally he had no social life. Basically, his social life was role playing, and he literally dropped all of his money on books. And so you could go up there and look at his bookcases of just nothing but role playing games. So, and he would buy anything and everything. So you could take it down, look at it, and go from there. And if you were interested in it, he would be almost willing to run it and stuff. So he knew it.
Well, I want to ask you about one that I saw was in your slide presentation, and you brought it up when we were talking about it, that I'd never heard of. It was called the Morrow Project. What was that all about?
So the Morrow Project was actually a role-playing game based post-apocalyptic, where you were a team, or at least this is the scenario or the campaign that I was run through, where basically you were cryogenically frozen, and then after World War III was over or whatever, you were brought out of stasis, and basically you were to reestablish the world. And basically, you'd wake up, you're in these fortresses, and basically think of, our Wasteland video that we've shown a couple times here is that type of element where you're out there, you're fighting, mutated people or creatures trying to reestablish the world in a social order and stuff. And I had a lot of fun with that because being in the military, I knew all the weapons, and it just kind of gave me a sense of like, man, this is something I'm kind of familiar with and everything. So I really enjoyed the Morrow Project. It was not a well-known role-playing game. I mean, I don't even know if they had modules for it. I mean, we had basically the 3 books to be able to create a character, a GM, and that was about it. I don't remember ever finding any type of modules for the game system at all.
Well, I got to say, for my honorable mentions, for the greatest, well, not the greatest, one of the best campaigns I ever ran was, I believe it was when Mongoose Publishing was producing a Babylon 5 role-playing game. And kind of like what Sprout said, you spend all this time developing something, and pretty soon the players kind of go off and do their thing. But Babylon 5 was designed that way. Anyone who's familiar with the show knows that it's an environment where everybody has their own agenda and everybody wants to do their own thing. And I have to say, once I got my brain around that as a GM, it became so liberating, because I would start off with these 7 or 8 page scenarios, and by about the 4th game they were down to like 3 pages, and then by the 8th game or 9th game they were down to like a page and a half. And then it got to the point of I was making more notes of remembering who screwed who over in the last game so that we could deal with the repercussions of that. And then I had like 5 bullet points of plot points I wanted to divvy out to you guys because I knew I had this story. But I literally became a referee. I was not a GM. I became a referee. You were part of that game.
Oh, I remember. That was so much fun.
There's still a lot of hanging fruit there and I know that the Blues man's still bitter about the fact that we didn't get to resolve a lot of that.
Because his side was after my doctor, who was actually size sensitive and everything.
Yeah.
So I remember being chased through the station and everything. We got a couple comments real quick. Like I believe Bruce is saying an early version of Resident Evil. Yes, I would agree with that. And then let's not get started on the B5 game we all played. That's Bruce as well. There, so
that's probably wise.
Yeah, so I think there's probably one more game that I think I want to throw a shout out to, and there's probably just a few people's played it, and it's probably, I would honestly say, have to be the easiest game a GM to run. And especially when alcohol is involved, it becomes even easier. It's Paranoia.
Oh my God, dude. I totally forgot about Paranoia.
Man, I tell you, the more they drink and just throwing those little nuggets out there, you literally could get a whole scenario out of 5 lines on a piece of paper.
Well, yeah. Okay, so before you go into this, I'm gonna dole out my one experience from Paranoia.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna let you talk. We were all in a room. Our party was in a room. And someone shorted out the lights, and we killed each other in the dark.
I mean, that's basically that's every scenario right there. I mean, it's like I'm trying to remember the game, and again, I'm not going to lie. There was a lot of alcohol that night, so this is probably why it's not as fresh. But I remember it still lives very prominent in my mind is the fact that we're all sitting in our dorm room, we're playing it, and literally the GM leans over, whispers something into someone else's ear. And that's how the scenario started. And at the end, literally, we were all conniving against each other. I mean, like, just because whatever he whispered into it, the guy would not say anything, but he would do things. And then basically you're trying to figure out why he did that. And I mean, and it's like, well, then something would happen where it would kick off and the GM would just you'd see him just roll a dice behind his GM screen. And it's like, what was that for? I mean, dude, I'm telling you, Paranoia is probably the worst game in a sense that if you want to have, I guess if you want to have a campaign, there's no way to do that in Paranoia.
Right. No.
That is a con game where literally you sit down, you hand them, and you go about it. And if you have alcohol, that just makes it even better.
Yeah.
So
I guess to close this out, you know, we have a lot of games that we kind of touched on, like Warhammer, which is the money pit of miniatures.
Yep.
You know, we've made a lot of hay out of, you know, people that used to game like Sprout or Ronnie. Well, Ronnie doesn't play, but like if Dwayne were to come back and play with us today and Sprout, they wouldn't even know what they were looking at because we've gotten so high tech with videos and music and things like that. But I guess because as we said, we kind of feel like it's our mission as a GM to make people feel like they're in a movie or a TV show. But I think part of it too is to compete with the modern RPG competitor, which is the video game. So in the age of games like Skyrim, Halo, Mass Effect, The Witcher, do you think that tabletop RPG has a long-term future?
Man, that's a great question. And you know, I still think
it's our Sprout for that question too.
I know that would have been a great one. And you know, if anyone's still watching everything, I'd love to see them put some comments in. I don't think it does. I mean, you know, because to be honest, I've got 3 boys, and all of them are into video games and stuff like that. But Jonathan, my middle one, he wants to actually still build and develop an RPG system himself. He wants to actually do like what Star Trek Adventures did with Modiphius. Modiphius did. He actually wants to create a whole new world for an RPG game system, and not a video game, an actual tabletop role-playing game system. And I guess I'll also kind of throw this out to the fact that in order for this to stay alive, I think it's people like us, the old schoolers, that have to keep introducing it to the younger generation to keep it alive. But I think it'll still be around. I mean, because I think it's a birthing place to what we get in the way of video games. Some have taken a stronger hold, like I said, with Skyrim and The Witcher and all that. Again, you can't look at that and not say man, this all kind of started with Gary Gygax and D&D. And we get some of the we get some of the space stuff, and this is D&D, but this is D&D in space. This is Spelljammer. This is Star Trek. And I just don't see how we will. It's almost like the movie industry now. It's like for the longest time they never went to comic books for any type of story ideas. But where are we at today? I mean,
right.
You can't you can't hear about a movie coming out in 3 months that's not some type of comic book reference or anything to that effect. So I think that tabletop gaming is going to stay around. And I think we're going to see it develop, and especially when you have GMs like yourself and me and I that add the extra element with videos and music, and then also with the addition of 3D motion type maps that are now out there. Because if you go online, you're seeing everyone knowing how to develop a map box where it uses a TV that you HDMI into it, and they're creating images of maps that your characters can walk on and stuff. Right. So I think it's here to stay. I mean, and we'll see it for years to come.
Well, because my thought on that is, yes, you can hook up online and play with people online. Nothing beats that communal experience. Right. It's kind of like the difference between streaming and going to a movie theater.
Yep.
Nothing beats that communal experience of you guys sitting around a table and hashing out a plan and watching it either succeed or fail or have to modify it or whatnot.
Yep.
And it's a very instantaneous gratification kind of form that I hope survives. I don't want to say, well, but when you see things like Star Trek Adventures and some of the other things and the new Alien game that's come out, you see, okay, these systems are fast, they're agile, they give the GM a lot of options, and they give the players a lot of options to do things with. That's where I think the future lies. I mean, when you look at things like the new Star Wars game that have all the different, what boggles my mind is when, for example, let's take the new Star Wars system that's out that has the dice that have pictures on it. Okay.
Yeah.
I get it that you're trying to make it faster. Okay. But for our group, for my generation, I find this off-putting.
It is.
I'm not going to learn another dice system.
Well, I wouldn't even say it's another dice system. It's like, I think it's also kind of defeating the purpose. Just think about how quickly you became such a mathematician that you could add numbers up so quick, like boom, 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 boom. Okay, yeah, you hit that armor class. Now it's like you didn't get the right picture. Sorry, no, that didn't work. And that's, I don't know. It kind of, in my personal opinion, it kind of dumbs it down a little bit, in a sense that, and I don't mean that to be negative. I don't know. There was also kind of learning going on with the old playing games and stuff. I mean,
and okay, I'm kind of stumbling over myself because I've got a wealth of emotions here. So, yes, I find the dice with pictures on them to be somewhat condescending to a certain point. But then, like if you look at the new Star Wars role-playing game, which they've got several versions, but there's Age of Rebellion, Rise of the Empire, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, then you've got their miniature game, which is the X-Wing. Okay. Yeah. And then you've got the Star Wars Fleet Battle game, which I cannot remember the name of. I apologize. But none of the three systems are compatible with each other. And you're like, who is the genius who thought this was a good idea?
Yep.
So my point is kind of like with modern Star Wars in general, I'm almost going to reject you outright because you're not getting my money on all these different products because I don't have time to learn all this shit.
Right.
The best things are games that are compatible. Like I'll never forget one of the greatest things in the Modifius rule book is, hey, we have a line of miniatures coming out for crews. We don't make ships. There's a lot there, and I can't remember the phrase, but basically, there's another company that makes ship miniatures that are way better than anything we can make. If you want ship miniatures, buy those and use them buy that brand and use them with our game. It's like fantastic. I mean,
how great is that as a company recognizes that there's someone that does it better. We're not going to put the effort into it in the sense that, just to go over and do it there. I'm not going to be a competitor with someone else that puts out a superior product. We've got this element. You go another route for this. They all intermix together, and it works perfectly and stuff. So,
Bruce Haley did make a comment that he's forgotten what tabletop role-playing gaming is like. Hint, hint. We're on social distancing. I'm sorry. I had a lot of really cool stuff in the pipeline, and COVID-19.
I still got to finish up the part 3 of Heroes Unlimited. Taking the Star Wars or the Star Trek Adventures game, I wanted to start doing a Star Wars Adventures scenario where we even developed how to use the Jedi powers in that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to experiment with that, and I had a great story idea. So we've got a lot of things in the pipe, but it just life happens.
Yeah,
we're trying to get there. We're trying to get there.
We've had mixed results doing it over Skype. So
yes.
Anyway, so with that having been said, is there anything else you want to say before we sign off tonight?
No, other than just saying thanks for everyone tuning in. This has been a great topic, and I thanks Sprout for actually coming up with the idea. You and I were kicking around what would be a kind of a cool topic, and reaching out to our out-of-state brothers on what it would be. This was a great topic and a lot of fun. So thanks out to Sprout for this idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So that having been said, again, one more time, if you like what we're doing, keep liking, keep sharing. Go to the YouTube page. If you guys have a topic idea that you want us to talk about, by all means, send it in. We are always looking for programming ideas. As we kind of joked a couple weeks ago, we had all this great Bond programming in the pipeline, and then COVID-19 and the Chinese government decided they were going to be our executive producers and decided they were going to revamp the entire season about halfway through. So who knew we were working
we needed more time. They felt like we needed more time.
Yeah. So with that having been said, that's pretty much all I have. I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. We've had some really great comments. Don't forget to like us on YouTube. And like I said, like us on Facebook. Share this video. I want to thank the IT Geek for tuning in. I want to thank Sprout for tuning in. He had some technical difficulties that he had to deal with. So with that, for Fanboys 918, this is the Geek Boy signing off. Thanking everybody for tuning in tonight.